Hello, everyone. I hope you are well. Doing a late live stream today. Had to go work out and then had to do a live stream for the Rebel Capitalist Pro members with my good buddy Chris McIntosh. That was awesome. So a little late today, but we'll see how many people join us. Maybe this is a little bit better time. But wanted to go over some data from Yelp that CNBC is claiming is great news for the economy. But in my videos, I always talk about a misallocation of resources and malinvestment. And this is a great example. So let's head over to the article and I will show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so Yelp data shows almost 500,000 new businesses opened during the pandemic. That's down just 14% compared with a year ago. More than 15% of the new entities were restaurants, food, and businesses. So let's go down here. They kind of go into some more details, but still the same. The gist is still the same. Of the almost 500,000 new businesses that have opened, about 59% were within the professional, local, home, and auto category. Remember how I always talk about the U.S. economy being completely built on, well, outside of the stimmy checks and asset prices, debt, and confidence. But as far as the actual businesses themselves, it's all domestic services. Almost all of it. Almost all of it. So at the end of the day, we can't consume domestic services. Like, just think that, go back to the desert island. Okay, well, you could have all the domestic services you want, but you'd still be broke. You'd still be poor because you wouldn't have anything. You wouldn't have any shoes. You wouldn't have any clothes. You wouldn't have any food. You wouldn't have any stuff. You wouldn't have any computers. You wouldn't have a desk. You wouldn't have furniture. You wouldn't have these lights. I'm just looking around my office. I wouldn't have the whiteboard. I wouldn't have my camera. I wouldn't have my pen. I wouldn't have my phone. I wouldn't have my chair. I mean, I'd have all of these people to install my chair. I'd have all of these people to deliver my chair, but I wouldn't have a chair. It's just something that we have seemed to completely forget or take for granted, that we just don't have to make anything. All we have to do is serve each other. And let the foreigners make the stuff. They'll always accept those dollars. So usually what would happen is you would make stuff, the foreigners would make stuff, and you would trade back and forth. And then there'd be a trade surplus, and a trade deficit, go back and forth based on the currency. This was something called the David Hume called it back in the days of Adam Smith, called it the price specie flow model. And it was just basically, back then, gold, just whoever had the highest, or whoever had the most exports, well, they would have a trade surplus. Therefore, more gold would come in. More gold would be more money. Their prices would go up. If their prices go up, they become less competitive as far as exports, and it just kind of balances itself out over time. So, going back to the days of the 1970s, as an example, with Milton Friedman and Thomas Sowell, they would be asked, is the trade deficit a big deal? They'd say, nah, not really, because they would assume that at some point in time, we would manufacture more stuff than the foreigners, and then it would just kind of go back and forth naturally based on who was the best at manufacturing XYZ. But now we don't make anything. So how can we trade with the foreigners when we don't have anything to trade other than green pieces of paper? If you just take it to its logical conclusion, at some point, that dog don't hunt. But my point in this video wasn't necessarily that. That was kind of a tangent. What I wanted to point out is how many of these 500,000 businesses would have been opened if it weren't for stimmy checks, which are totally unsustainable, right? The government can't print purchasing power forever, or else why are we working, right? How many of these businesses were started with seed money from those stimulus checks? And I think that's a great thing to do with your stimulus check. But the bottom line is these people are starting businesses. Why? Because they see demand in the marketplace for the service they are willing to provide. Well, let's just say you're starting a home business is great. Auto business. I mean, all of these are perfect examples. But how much demand would there be for autos, as an example, if unemployment was still at 20%? Or it might be if you actually measure the numbers correctly. But without the stimmy checks, how much demand would there be for autos? Probably less. How much demand would there be for professional services? Probably a hell of a lot less. Therefore, when demand goes back to its level based on the fundamentals, then all of these professional businesses are going to be bust. Not all of them, but the ones that were in excess of what real demand was based on the productivity of the society. So let's just say that this person started a professional business by taking $50,000 of their life savings. But they did so based on a market signal telling them that there was sufficient demand. But there was only sufficient demand due to the stimmy checks, which were temporary. Well, these people, they might not watch the George Gammon channel or whatever. They don't know the difference. So that is a misallocation of someone's savings because they're going to go bust. It's just like the guy that started the concrete company or the construction company in 2006 because he saw all these houses going up and a housing boom. Right. Totally unsustainable. The guy loses his life savings. So that is not only a misallocation of resources, it's malinvestment, and it's a complete distortion of the economy, and it's a loss of savings in capital investment that otherwise would have gone into something that was sustainable because it was demand produced by a free market. Therefore, it was demand that was created. It was purchasing power that was created by productivity and not the government just printing up funny money. So, I mean, I hope these businesses do well, but at the end of the day, a lot of them are going to go bust. And it's all because of the government, and it's all because of this, the way they have chosen to artificially prop up, and temporarily, by the way, prop up the economy. If they continue to do it, you say, well, why can't it last forever? Why can't they just continue to stimmy up the economy for the next 40 years? Because at some point in time, you've got to pay the fiddler because you don't have any stuff. You're not producing any stuff. And this isn't a result of productivity. I always ask the question, if the government can print purchasing power, then why are we working at all? Why? Why don't we just import a bunch of people to do everything for us or whatever? And why don't we just sit at home and just collect money from the government and we'll all be rich? Or another way to say it is, why doesn't the government just send everyone $1 million and then we'll be rich, right? So it doesn't work that way. There isn't a free lunch. And the more the government does, although it may seem like the smart thing to do and the humane thing to do at the time, because you just get this out of right field cerveza sickness, regardless of whether the intentions are good or not, the results are always going to be the same. Okay, guys, I'm going to go ahead and grab some dinner. Let's see, we got 220. Yeah, that's about, I think, the best time for these, right around 4 or 5 o'clock my time. So right around maybe 6 or 7 Eastern time. That seems to be the best when we have the most people on. But I appreciate you guys being on the live stream. Let's do some shout outs here. We've got Deal Donkey on Twitter. X Raw. Oh, whoops. I did that on accident. X Raw Gold X Peter Frauen. Wayne Smith. Mexi Mike. Harry Hunter. Special K on Acid. Aha. Now there is it one hell of a username. I think maybe that's Jerome Powell. Ram Jam Flim Flam. Daniel Solovayov. Sebastian Brozak. James P. Jane will say. James Bunch. Did I say James already? James Bunch. We'll say him twice. Mexi Mike. J.R. Moxley. Rigo 13 Knowledge. Alex Z. Zumac 99. Wayne Smith. Josh Lazard. Boy, Josh is getting like George Overload here. He was just on the last live stream with the members. Or I think maybe Josh, I know we had a question from Josh on the member live stream. I don't know if he was on there. But Josh, good to see you, buddy. Thanks for hanging out, man. 2 Timothy 3:1-7. Friend and family member Fred, Elvis H. Custer, Mount Rushmore, KOA, Flying Dutchman, Donald Winters. All right, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. No George Gammon video tonight. It was like 40 minutes, and we could not get it edited in time. So that'll be coming out tomorrow night. You guys check it out. You're going to love it. I go into a deep dive on Michael Burry and his warnings for hyperinflation, comparing the United States to Weimar Germany, and where our numbers would have to be as far as consumer price inflation, the increase in money supply, government debt, for us to be sowing the seeds of potential hyperinflation. Not now, not in 5 years, but maybe 10, 15 years down the road. So check that out. You guys are going to love it. We'll see you in the next video.